Ah, how the mighty have fallen. Or at least that's what a lot of people have been saying about Helldivers 2 over the last couple of months. This game has seen its fair share of controversy at launch, many of the patches that rolled out, and most notoriously with the PSN requirement debacle that left a seriously sour and salty taste in many people's mouths. That originally sounded a lot less sus when writing the script, but after saying it out loud, I'd like to apologize.
To absolutely nobody!
All jokes aside, I find news outlets and big members of the gaming community are far too ready to make outlandish statements like X game is dead, it has no players compared to launch, which I guess is exactly what I did in the first 5 seconds of the video. But to be honest, if we take a look at the stats, Helldivers 2 player count has fallen off a cliff over the last month, especially with a peak player count of just 120,000 in the last 30 days, which is a quarter of what it was in February post-launch, even despite the server issues. Many of the most recent global orders and warbonds have just not been enough to keep players coming back, including myself, honestly, but that might just be because I've been a little obsessed with Cyberpunk these last couple of weeks, but that's beside the point. And the point of this video is to take a look at everything new dropping with the Warbond 13th of June, codenamed Viper Commando. So without further ado, my name's BigWynter, and let's do this. For Super Earth! First off, before we take a look at the specifics, I just wanted to address the commentary released by Arrowhead leading up to the Warbond release. Now, in my last video, I spoke out about how I would much rather see the game get fixes and quality improvements it needs instead of just dropping reskins of the same armor passives and an influx of weapons that are just lackluster to begin with or are nerfed into the ground after just a few days. Now, I'd love to say that Arrowhead watched my video specifically, and I'd love to take credit for it, and although I doubt they did, they explicitly said they're slowing down the pace at which they release warbonds to give a little more time to polish the designs before they're released. Additionally, they said they're changing the arrangements of items in each warbonds to make room for new items and also higher quality armors and weapons. This will prevent them from simply adding more of everything, leading to weapons that feel redundant and uninteresting armors. It's time to focus on quality over quantity. This I'm actually very happy to hear, as my comments from the last video were reflected by the community at large. The Polar Patriots Warbond had this nice Arctic aesthetic, but nothing released fit with that theme whatsoever, and arguably they released an incendiary fire grenade with an icy aesthetic warbond. But with the new Viper Commando Warbond, this looks to be changing, so let's take a look. Starting off, as we usually do, let's take a look at the new weapons dropping with this warbond. Now, unlike the usual 3 primaries and 1 secondary, Arrowhead seem to be pretty true to their word here by releasing only 1 primary and 1 secondary. Starting with the primary, we had the AR-23A Liberator Carbine. Being the 4th Liberator added to the game, you might be wondering, how could this possibly be any different from the first 3? Well, the Viper Commando blog post states that this one has a modified shortened form factor that handles differently from the true classic, with a bit of a higher recoil but faster handling that feels perfect for spraying and praying up close. This description sounds very in line with the up close and personal theme of the Warbond, and from my testing so far, it's pretty on point. This new primary features a fairly low mag count of only 7 versus 8 of the normal Liberator, features light armor penetrating and almost identical stats to the original Liberator, except for the fact that you do have that faster fire rate at the trade-off of greater recoil, and so far I'm honestly really enjoying it. Whilst it is fairly ineffective versus the larger, more armored targets, it does fulfill the fantasy of spraying down the hordes as you rush through the jungle. Next up, we have the
Mozambique,
we have the newest secondary weapon, the SG22 Bushwhacker, which is a triple-barreled sawed-off shotgun with 2 firing modes, including one that shoots all 3 barrels at once. This is the first shotgun secondary we have in the game, and as someone that absolutely adores the shotguns in this game, I'm super stoked to see that we'll be able to blast bugs up close and have a primary weapon slot free to take out enemies at longer range. The Bushwhacker features light armor penetration and the same single slug reload as the Punisher and the Slugger, allowing you to reload with the confidence of knowing that you're not wasting your ammo every time you hit reload. Whilst less content and weapons is usually a bad thing, I'm really happy to see Arrowhead taking initiative and getting things right and focusing on having balanced and functional content out of the gate, allowing them more time to fix existing issues rather than playing damage control on the half-baked nonsense that's come in previous warbonds. Finally, on the newest combat editions, we have something really interesting but similarly on theme. We have the brand new K2 throwing knife, which I did not see coming. Now, I'm an absolute sucker for throwing knives in games, and my Cyberpunk build revolves entirely around it, but I'm a little skeptical here. Now, I haven't actually been able to do much testing myself, but from my my research, you get 8 total, so twice as many as regular grenades. It has a theoretical armor penetration value of 3, which means it should damage the Strider legs, but it doesn't. Its flat damage is 250, and its weak point damage is only 100, which means it's actually pretty terrible for hitting things like heat sinks and bile spewer behinds. It has no way of closing bug holes, so unless you're pairing it with a grenade pistol or a launcher, it's essentially just there for style points, which I'm actually kinda totally okay with. Further differentiating from previous Warbonds, we only have 2 new armors dropping as opposed to the typical 3. One light and one heavy, both sporting exposed bulging biceps and both featuring a brand new passive very fitting of the jungle commando aesthetic called Peak Physique, which improves melee damage and weapon handling, which perfectly complements the new Liberator carbine. The light armor is called the PH9 Predator and comes with this new beret headpiece, which looks hella dope. The heavy armor, the PH202 Twig Snapper, comes in combination with this beautiful jungle camoed helmet. Additionally, what's super cool is that these new armor sets also feature a variety of randomized skin tones to better suit the variety of players and to highlight the fact that Helldivers are entirely replaceable. Although I do hope players eventually have a greater customization of these skin tones, so each demographic gets their tone of preference if they wanted to align it to themselves. And before we dive further into this new theme of skins and customization, I just wanted to touch on the final gameplay changing feature, the new experimental infusion booster. This new booster gives your stims the added bonus of boosting your movement speed and reducing the damage taken for a short while. Now this may sound relatively familiar and you might be picturing the med kit armor passive seen on several of the medic armor sets. Now despite the similarity, I'm actually very excited for this one, as I'd often pick the medic armor sets over some other passives as I really enjoyed the prolonged stim effect. But with this new booster, we'll be able to provide a similar effect for the entire team and be afforded further flexibility on the armor we choose and the individual passives for yourself. Let me know if you agree in the comments below. But revisiting this new theme of skins and customization, we're finally seeing the addition of Hellpod, Exosuit, and Pelican customization launching initially with the new Undergrowth aesthetic. Whilst these new skins are very on brand, personally, I think they look a little goofy and I kind of like the original aesthetic, but I am excited to see what new skins we get in the future. What I am really curious about though is with the Pelican, would it only show the skin for yourself client side, or would whoever on the team called in the extraction, would it be their skin that would be applied? I need to do a little more testing and I'll see what's up. And finally, on the new Warbond, I'll group these together as I know the video is getting a little longer here and I don't want to waste your time. We do have 2 new dope capes, 3 beautiful poses and emotes, 2 new banners, which I really just don't care about, and a new player title, the Viper Commando. Let me know your thoughts on this new Warbond and the current state of Helldivers 2 in the comments. I actually had a whole section here talking about how we hadn't had an update since the 14th of May, and I said, hey, maybe the update will come with the Warbond, and it did. So I'm gonna have to put together a video on that very soon. But it's just been a really busy week or so for me, hence why this video is out a little bit later than I would have liked. I've seen a few leaks on new enemies, objectives, and factions, so drop a like and sub if you've enjoyed the video and to stay up to date with the latest Helldivers 2 news. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Take care out there and much love.